Good afternoon, and welcome to the New Bedford Whaling Museum. It's lovely to see all of you here joining us. I'm Naomi Slip. I'm Chief Curator and Director of Museum Learning at the museum, and we're thrilled to be able to host this special screening of Sweet Freedom, a new film by Alyssa Botelho that celebrates the life of confectioner and abolitionist Polly Johnson. The program is offered in conjunction with Lighting the Way, South Coast Women's Lives, Labors, Loves, a special exhibition that was supported by a devoted group of donors and the efforts of the Women's History Advisory Committee here at the museum, and we're grateful to them for their support. Today we'll watch the film, which has a runtime of about 28 minutes, and then have a panel discussion, which will be led by the director, followed by a reception with ginger cookies baked by the baker, thanks to a recipe of Polly Johnson's provided by Lee Blake, president of the New Bedford Historical Society and steward of Polly's legacy, along with her descendants, some of whom I understand we're honored to have joining us today. Chief Gray Fox Page, Donna Raindance Page, Deborah Twisting Breeze Kopp, and Eleanor Spirit Hawk Page. So thank you all for coming to join us to watch this incredible film. Very excited to be able to offer this here today and to enjoy the conversation afterward and the refreshments that will follow. So I know throughout the film, if you are feeling a hankering for something sweet, it will come at the end. But for now, please take your seat, and in just a few moments when folks are settled, we'll get the film started. Please enjoy. Thank you. Here, I'm going to introduce everyone on the panel, and then I'll sit down and hand it off to our incredible leader of this project, Alyssa, to convene the conversation. But if everyone wants to come up, we're joined on this panel by Claudia Nagala, who was the costume designer, makeup artist, and actor from Acushnet, Massachusetts, who is passionate about storytelling through her craft. Entirely self-taught, Claudia brings a unique blend of creativity and resourcefulness to every project she works on. A constant collaborator with filmmaker Alyssa Botelho, Claudia plays a key role in bringing cinematic visions to life, while also working closely with Deborah Roderick to make everyone's costume dreams a reality. Her attention to detail, research, and ability to balance budget constraints with artistic expression ensures each wardrobe piece is both authentic and impactful on the big screen. Deborah Borges Roderick is a dedicated artist based in Fairhaven with a passion for painting and costume design, or a wave or something. Since 2014, she's been the costume designer for the Fairhaven High School Theater Company, where she first met Claudia and Alyssa. After their graduation, they began collaborating on films, and Sweet Freedom marks their 5th project together. Deborah loves a challenge and truly enjoys recreating any era that is presented to her with creativity and resourcefulness, consistently bringing characters to life on screen and stage, even when working with limited budgets. Carly Byers is a writer, director, and producer from Freetown, Mass. She's passionate about cultivating her local film community and creating inclusive and collaborative on-set environments. On Sweet Freedom, she worked closely with the producing team to manage all logistics, including budget, locations, crew, and yes, horses. She serves as a board member of Women in Film Video New England and on the committee for the New Bedford Film Festival. She has produced and directed multiple award-winning narrative short films, which have gone on to screen at film festivals nationally and internationally. Lori Gomes, a New Bedford native, is owner of Beauty Union, located in the historic district of New Bedford. Throughout her 30-plus years in the industry, she's educated stylists across the country and serves as the chair of the Greater New Bedford Regional Vocational Technical High School Cosmetology Board. Through her program, Beauty Union University, Lori has had the opportunity to assist students behind the scenes of New Bedford Festival Theater productions, The Wiz, as well as the Sweet Freedom film. Lori also is a multi-genre singer and band leader of Lori Gomes Ensemble. She's performed around the South Coast and shares the stage with many major artists, such as Jubu and Eric Pickfunk-Smith. Stay tuned for her debut album. When she isn't behind the chair or on stage, she enjoys beach time with her 2 grandsons. Jan De Silva, historical consultant and Executive producer for the project is the program manager for visitor experience and resource stewardship for New Bedford Whaling National Historical Park. She attended Princeton University, earning a degree in history. Jan moved to the New Bedford area in 1996 to attend Roger Williams University in Bristol, Rhode Island. She's worked in the preservation field for the City of New Bedford, the New Bedford Historical Society, and the Massachusetts Historical Commission. In 2008, Jan successfully applied for a position at New Bedford Whaling National Historical Park, and as part of her work responsibilities, she sits on the New Bedford Historical Commission and is chair of the New Bedford Community Preservation Committee. Jan spends time contributing to the New Bedford community and serves as treasurer for Martha Briggs Educational Club, Inc., and on the board of the New Bedford Preservation Society. She also serves on the board of directors of the Martha's Vineyard Camp Meeting Association, and previously she served on the YWCA Southeastern Massachusetts Board of Directors. For fun, Jan is an avid knitter and spins her own yarn. Lee Blake, who was a historical consultant on the project, is a public historian who works to preserve local history and create public spaces that celebrate people of color. Currently the president of the New Bedford Historical Society, Lee has received several awards for her work as a preservationist, including the Robert G. Stanton Award for her work promoting and preserving the history of the Underground Railroad by the National Park Service in 2018, a Massachusetts Cultural Council Commonwealth Award for her work in the humanities, and the Massachusetts Humanities Governor's Award in the Humanities, both in 2019, and a Bay State Legacy Award in 2022 for her work in African American history, and Woman of the Year for the City of New Bedford for her work reclaiming Black history. In 2023, she was awarded an honorary doctorate in African American Studies and Social Justice by the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. It's amazing. And Aria Jamila, born in Italy and raised in the Caribbean, and now trying to make sense of life in New Jersey, is a creative and cultural bridge builder. As a proud Muslim, she believes in faith, resistance, and the undeniable ability of a well-told story to speak truth to power. Playing Rhoda in Sweet Freedom wasn't just acting, it was an opportunity to honor the kind of Black and Indigenous women history books often ignore. And let's be real, the Johnson women were full of main character energy. When Aria is not bringing characters to life, she spends time with her loved ones and attempts to train her dogs, one of whom is more Tasmanian devil than Maltese. She is so excited to be in community with everyone to celebrate the life and legacy of Polly Johnson. And last but not least, Alyssa Botelho. Born and raised in a small New England town by the sea, Alyssa's love for storytelling began in a 19th century library and has become a place of great inspiration. Driven by a deep fascination with the untold stories of the past, her films often spotlight women's experiences, blending historical depth with elements of suspense, existentialism, and dry humor. Alyssa's proudest accomplishment to date is the recognition her previous film, inspired by the 17th century Salem witch trials, received, including Best Short Fiction and Best Director awards from the New England College chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. So please welcome me in having Alyssa come up and lead this panel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming out and for the Whaling Museum for hosting us and the Women's Committee too. This is just a fantastic way to celebrate Women's History Month. I mean, hearing all your bios, I'm not a fan of Marvel, but it's like we've got the Avengers here. So yeah, without further ado, we are all so eager to engage with you. This is, I think, my favorite part of every screening and sharing the film is hearing your questions, whether it's about history or the production of it, anything in between. We are just so excited to talk with you and hear your questions and engage. So yeah, we'll have, oh great, we have one already, okay. Yes.
Yes, how did you come about finding this story?
Yes. So I wanted to write a story about a historical figure in the area. We have great history. Our community is so rich in these amazing stories, amazing people. And it was on the New Bedford Historical Society's website where I had learned about Polly Johnson. And from there, I had gone to the office, which is in her house, which is still standing, and you can go and visit it. And yeah, I just learned more, and then visiting with her descendants was incredible too, and just learning more about who this woman was. And it just immediately felt that pull to use what I have in filmmaking, the craft that I've developed in filmmaking, to help share her story on an even bigger stage after decades of work preserving her story. I don't know if you want to talk anything about that. Yeah.
So I'm so grateful that we met Alyssa, because the New Bedford Historical Society has been telling this story for 30 years. We've saved the Nathan and Polly Johnson house. Jan was one of the members who helped us do all that. The house had originally been a single-room occupancy that was slated for maybe destruction. But as a Black organization, we saved that. But we also saved the oral histories. And a number of the histories have been written down over the years. The Nathan and Polly Johnson story, for instance, and the story of the Gibsons is in a lot of African-American journals. We read about it. We just recently, must have been a month ago, American Ancestors did the story again. So always we're kind of reconnecting with people and bringing these stories to the forefront. But just like Paul Cuffey, people had forgotten who he was. It's our job as historians to make sure that we create these visible forces where people have to look and say, wow, that happened in New Bedford. Wow, that happened to our people. And Alyssa did that with film, and we're grateful.
Thank you. We have a question here, and I think a mic will come to you.
I have a question about the name. We've gone from colored to Negro to Black and to Afro-American. Why?
So my question is, why not?
No other people have changed their names, like that.
Right.
Why? And we only went from Afro-American after Stokes got up there and said Black Power, which was too much. And then we had to go to Congress or wherever and legally change it to Afro-American.
So let me just say, sometimes you need a bigger arc of history, because there were people in the 1600s, the 1700s, the 1800s who called themselves African. Paul Cuffey used to refer to himself as an African and an Afro-Indian. Things just change. The other thing is, being called a Negro was not anything that African Americans or Black people at the time called themselves. That's what white people called us when we were being oppressed. So at different points in time, people come together and they decide on how they want to be named. And the African American community had a long history of doing conventions and women's meetings where we'd come together and say, we have to deal with this. We have to come up with ways that we want to be referred to. Okay. And that's how that happened.
Now, Negro, did that come from Nigeria? Negro?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I'll just add a little bit more to that. I think Negro came from the Niger River. So And I don't think it was necessarily because we gave ourselves that name, it's just that was the location. But in Boston in 1796, there was a group called the Sons of Africa. So people called themselves African for a long time, then they started calling themselves colored in 1830. I don't think we can actually say what the reasons are why people changed their names. I guess it was probably more expedient for them to have that change. Maybe they were looking for, I like the term people of color because I want to be more inclusive. I want to include everyone, no matter what their ethnicity or racial background. And that probably is one reason why they went by colored before, even though at that point, the only colored people mostly in the United States were of African descent. So, I mean, you can also say you're of African descent. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can call yourself, so.
I have a question for Ms. Botelho. So when you're writing historical fiction like this, could I call it historical fiction, or would you say non-fiction? I mean, it's because you're coming up with your own dialogue. So it's based on history. And I want to know how difficult it is for you, because you must be doing research, going into the logs and talking to the family members to getting an idea of how she would speak and the dialogue. So I'm just curious how difficult of a process that is when you're writing like historical fiction like this. It's nonfiction because it's true, but you have to come up with this dialogue. And I'm just curious what your process, if you could tell me briefly.
Yeah, it was a lot of reading letters from the time period to kind of get the mechanics of how they strung words together. And then in redrafting, paring it down a little bit because people wrote, the idea was that when they wrote, it was such a more distinguished thing. So speaking would have been a little bit more relaxed than writing, which we can kind of see today, but even more so in the 1800s. And then also reading some of Frederick Douglass's works, there are some direct quotes from things that were said. I believe it was Frederick Douglass who had written the "No slaveholder can take a slave from New Bedford. There are men who would lay down their lives before such an outrage could be perpetrated." And that was fun to work with the actor too on getting that string of words to feel natural coming out of his mouth too, because it's such a, I mean, it's an incredible statement, and but something that you wouldn't organically say, especially in today's time period. So it was a lot of working it through, reading text from the time period, and then working with Jan too on things that felt, a little bit out of place. And we, I think, met maybe like 5 weeks in a row or something like that, just going over the script, and just working it out. Yeah, collaboration.
Let me also say that it was Nathan Johnson who makes that statement. But letters to the Gibsons are all in our public library. So when she talks about reading letters, she's actually reading the letters between Nathan, the Gibsons, the Molyneux. She's actually reading historical documents that are very real.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
I'm talking my teacher voice. The costumes, who's responsible for the costumes? You did a great job.
If you could repeat the question, we are recording. Just wait for the microphone if you could, please. Thank you.
It was actually an honor to be a part of this project. Okay. I have to thank Alyssa and Sean and Claudia for believing in me. It was really big shoes to fill, really big shoes. Textiles are a big, important piece. You don't want anything looking new and crispy, because back in those days,
The little buttons.
tough
and
times
everything.
back in those days. So you wanted everything to look not too bright, not too fancy,
Lived in,
lived in.
yeah.
Who did their hair?
Oh,
That would be me. I can tell you a little about that if you want to know. So we had a limited budget, and I will stress that we had a limited budget. So it was very difficult, but it turned out not to be so difficult. I just happened to find the right type of hair and was able to transform it into what we wanted them to look like. And as far as getting them to look like what we wanted them to look like, Alyssa and I had met a few times over the course of the year leading up to the production, the filming. And we have no pictures of Polly and Nathan Johnson. And there is a picture of her, is it her granddaughter? That's in the Historical Society on the wall? Yeah. Catherine. Yeah, so I even thought I could go over their heads and find some pictures and did my own research and nothing would come up. So basically, having experience with different textures in my field, I kind of guessed what the textures would be like on everyone, and then created from there and found some wigs that I could transform into whatever the look that we wanted them to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I thought the actors were terrific, and I think that Frederick Douglass has a future playing Frederick Douglass. He looked like, to me, what I have seen pictures of Frederick Douglass. I assume the whole story is basically a true story, but I didn't know anything about the story, in fact. What interested me were that very unattractive couple who were the slave hunters, I guess. Can you say, there wasn't any backstory, at least that I was aware of. Can you explain who they were and what we know about them? And were they killed in that incident in the confectionery story? Okay, thank you.
Yes, so the slave catchers were a fictional element of the story. I would say probably the largest fictional element of the whole story. But they were inspired by real people. So for example, Patty, who the actor is with us today, Kayla Carabedian, who did an incredible job. She is based on a real person who lived, Patty, I forgot her last name.
Call her patty rollers.
Yeah, and Patty Cannon. And if you look her up, the tagline is the most heinous woman to have ever lived. And and just heinous person, purely evil. And you can read all about her online and the atrocious things that she did, kidnapping people, many black people, murdering them, children. It's just absolutely insane. So she is based on her, and the two characters come into the story just to kind of represent that time period and the different ways that racism at the time kind of manifested, with the man taking a more entrepreneurial approach, and with her, it's just driven by hate and anger, but both evil in their own right, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the relationship between the Johnsons, the free black community, and the Wampanoags at that time.
Would you like to take that one?
Can you repeat?
I just wondered about their relationship with the Wampanoags.
Well,
They were speaking.
all right, so
There was some
first of all,
dialect,
I am a descendant of the Gibsons, all right? I'm also a descendant of Wampanoag people. And the reason I'm saying that is because all of you know it was against the law for African Americans, slaves, to marry each other, never mind to marry somebody white. So the laws of the land at that time really decide who we can marry. And if you were enslaved and you married somebody, that didn't mean you were married for life, because if your husband or your wife was valuable, they'd sell you. So you have to understand, one of the things is African Americans and Wampanoags married each other. And that had a lot to do with the laws, but it also had to do with Wampanoags also helped a lot on the Underground Railroad. So we know stories of the Wampanoags in Aquinnah who helped African Americans either get on ships or get off ships and hide. So there was always that relationship because you're talking about two different groups of people of color who are oppressed by the white community.
I'll just follow up a little bit more on that. There's quite a few African American Wampanoag marriages in this area. One is William P. Powell, who was a boarding house keeper, Underground Railroad conductor. He lived not sure where he lived, but his wife was also Wampanoag. And he moved to New York City and started a temperance boarding house there. Also, Paul Cuffey. Paul Cuffey's mother was Wampanoag. He married a Wampanoag, so it's not unusual. In New England, there's not that many women who are of African descent. So they would have chosen Wampanoag people to marry because Lee's right. They wouldn't have been able to marry a white woman. That would have been against the law. So you marry who you're around and who you have relationships with.
Hello? Okay. I just wanted to say it was a beautiful, beautiful story. I just wanted to know, is there going to be a part 2 to this sequel?
Who has large pockets? Absolutely, I would love that. From here, the film will go on a film festival run. We've submitted to about 35 across the country. I think one in Canada and one in the UK as well. And we'll hear about film festival acceptances. And the hope is that, as we share the story, as we share Polly's life and the Gibsons and Sweet Freedom, that, certain people with connections, producers, and the ability to make a feature film happen would be incredible. Because there's just so much to tell. There's so much of Polly's early life that I would love to share. And then after this little snippet that we see here, what's so interesting is that Nathan Johnson comes back and he's actually put on trial for trying to re-enslave the Gibsons. And it's an all-white jury. And you can look that up too, and there's a headline, "The whole town is ringing with it." And I just think that's such an interesting story to tell too. And but basically, yes, I hope we can see it expand.
I'd also like to add a footnote, because one of the important issues that happens in the film is that the white community in New Bedford works with Nathan and works with the black community because they are the only ones who can get the will of Patrick Gibson. So you'll see a lot of that collaboration between the blacks and the whites in New Bedford. Nathan asked for the will but couldn't get it because they wouldn't give it to a black man, but they would give it to a white lawyer.
I had a question. I noticed that I think it was well shot, that a lot of the locations seemed close by, and they were tight shots so that the modern stuff didn't show. I was wondering, were all of the locations in New Bedford proper, or and how'd you do that magic?
Yeah, that's another fun part of making a historical film. The locations we shot at Polly Johnson's house, which was incredible. That was our last day of filming, actually our last scene, so it felt like a really nice way to tie it all together. We also shot at Duval's in Dartmouth, the big yellow building. We shot at an estate in Marion that prefers to go unnamed. They want to kind of go under the radar, but wonderful people. And then Freetown is where we shot most of the scenes, the Freetown Historical Society, and they were incredible. And that's also a place I would highly recommend visiting because they have incredible history there too at the Freetown Historical Society. And then yes, of course, yeah, the Roach Jones Duff House at the end, the big party scene. Yes, so we shot there too. And then, yeah, a lot of getting clever with camera movements and framing. The director of photography, which is fancy word for the person who shot the film. He's actually here too if you want to talk with him after. His name is Sean Campbell, and he's right there in the back if you'd like to stand up. Sean is excellent. He's also my fiance, so I'm biased. That's how we got the job. And then there were a few shots, too, where outside of Duval's, when they're walking down the street, there's actually construction going on, which is a fun little surprise that we had the morning of. And, yeah, we had to have our VFX guy paint some of that stuff out. So. Go ahead.
I have a question. Hi. So I noticed there's a lot of children in the film, which I always love to see. How often did you guys did they ask a lot of questions about what was going on? And did you always film separately certain scenes that were heavier than others when the children were on set? I just wondered if they asked questions or how it was explained to them, like the young lady riding when they were going to go be free. Did you talk to her about the scene and what was happening, or was it kind of just filmed? As someone who has a son who's looking to pursue theater, I always like to know if there's a heavy scene, how is that portrayed by the director or the people they're working with, the child wrangler, it's often been called in theater.
Yes. That is such a great question. Thank you for asking it. For me, they didn't ask too many questions, I don't think. They were kind of just happy to be there. And so we didn't get too much into it. But I also kind of realized that the way I had written some of the scenes was kind of protecting them a little bit from some of those heavier things as the characters would. So for example, that tense dinner scene that happens later on, you know, where he says, there's a great danger that you'll be again enslaved. You say it much better than I do. Which, by the way, Lewis Temple is here, everybody. For that, I kind of wrote it with the thought in mind of, okay, we have young ears at the table, and this is a conversation more for adults. So the look between the two women, Polly and Betsy, I thought would happen organically, kind of, you know, maybe it's time for them to go to bed. So yeah, I think that's kind of my style too. Yeah.
Hi.
Ask everybody who was involved in the film to stand up.
My question is, what was the relationship with Nathan, Polly, and the Quakers around that time?
That's a great question. Would you like to talk?
You like to ask hard questions, huh? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by relationship. I mean, they knew each other. Nathan, I don't believe Nathan was a Quaker. Nathan purchased one of his buildings from the Quaker meeting, and we don't really have a lot of information about that. So are you looking for, were they friends and buddies? Is that what you're looking for? I think the Quakers did work toward helping people find freedom, but I also feel like they get way too much praise for that. I remember growing up and thinking it was all about Quakers, and there was never any discussion about how people of African descent freed themselves, which of course you're going to free yourself faster than somebody else helping you. So, I mean, I kind of feel like they've gotten too much glory, and so it's kind of hard to answer that question.
So if I could also add on, of course, the Nathan and Polly Johnson house is right across the street from the Friends Meeting House. So Nathan went to the Friends Meeting House at least 3 times to different meetings and asked to be a member of the Quakers. And at each time, they just didn't act on it. So they didn't say, yes, we want you. They didn't say, no, we don't want you. What they did was they didn't act on it. All right? But I'm also going to say that in Westport, now the Quakers are different depending on what community they lived in. In Westport, where Paul Cuffey lived, the Quakers accepted him. He helped finance their meeting house. He also set up the first integrated school because Quakers didn't want to go to school with his kids. So, you know, all these relationships have a lot of subtext to them. And I'll also say that in New Bedford, the Unitarian Church really did a lot to support the people of color here. Frederick Douglass gets his first job at the First Unitarian Church. So that whole thing about different religions had different ways of supporting their community.
Yeah, that's where I was going next, was to the Unitarians, because, you know, there was that major schism in the Quaker community in the 1820s, and quite a few of New Bedford's Quakers became Unitarians. So some of the names that we assume are Quaker, they might have become Unitarians. So it's kind of hard to be able to tell the difference. So I just think you can't say any one particular group did more than others to help people become free.
We have time to take one more question. I encourage you to stay for the dessert and tea reception and continue to ask your questions out here. I just want to make sure you are all able to get a little something sweet to eat. So one more question.
Yes, hello. I want to thank everybody in this film that you put on and the special acting that you did. My family is here to represent Polly. We are the Pocasset Tribe. Polly was the native of our tribe, a great-great-grandmother to the chief that's here today.
Please, a round of applause.
It's important. History is important, and its lessons. We have pride with what Polly did, what all our ancestors did, and the pride of telling our story still today and passing it on to our youth, and for never letting history pass on and die out. Continue saying your story, for their spirit lives, their message lives, and you walk that path. I thank you again for honoring that and recognize that, and recognizing Polly and the story and the trials that everybody in that time had to go through. And we still go through diversities today, and we're still going to go forward and keep moving on and make your story be told and be seen and be heard. Thank you.
Hear, hear. On that note, please stand and take a bow. Wonderful job. Please stand. Take a bow.
Anybody who was part of the film too, can I have cast and crew, anybody who was part of bringing this story to life, if you could stand up and be recognized too with us, please.